If you put a big hole in your tyre, obviously you can use a tyre boot and an inner tube just to get you home on the trail side. But if you're not ready to throw this tyre away just yet, then I'm going to show you how you can permanently fix this and save yourself a bit of money. So do hit that like button and do subscribe if you want to see more money saving tips like this in the future. So if you're on the trailhead at the moment and you just want a quick fix to get you home, then do check out my previous video. Link is in the description to show you 3 ways to repair a slashed sidewall out on the trail. But for today, we're going to have a nice cup of tea and sit down and permanently repair this tyre today. And this will work on sidewall slashes, holes, any slashes to the main tread or the main body of the tyre. However, if you have a hole near the bead, this might not work. If you've got a bead hole, my biggest tip for you is probably to get some tyre plugs, like tubeless tyre plugs like these PT's ones here. Poke that through the hole, then cut off the excess and use some vulcanized glue or some shoe glue, which I'm going to use later anyway, just to permanently seal that plug in, and it might get you a little bit longer out of your tyre. But for now, stay tuned for a more permanent patch fix on the main carcass. So you'll need to stitch up the sidewall so that it doesn't grow any bigger. So today I'm going to use some waxed thread. Now this is used to repair leather and to repair shoes, so it's going to be really strong for a rubber carcass. You can use fishing wire, although I might be worried that the metal might bed into the rubber and might not be as secure, but it is possible, or some really sturdy thread if you have any. Now I bought this as a kit off Amazon. It came with a leather working set of needles, which are a lot thicker. You're going to need something sturdy to get through rubber. Also, I like these nice curved ones, which will just make it easier to hook through the holes. Now you'll need a patch to go over your sewing work to cover those holes, especially if you're running tubeless. Now a bicycle patch kit will work, but because my slash is quite wide, I'm going for a motorcycle or car derived patch here, which you can just get online. Do be careful that they're not too thick though. You want it to be able to bend and mold to the shape of your tyre. In order to stick that patch, you're going to need to use some vulcanized glue. That usually comes with a bicycle repair patch, or you can buy it separately. I'm going to be using shoe goo, which is a branded version of shoe glue, which is also a vulcanized glue, but it's a much higher grade, and you can also layer this up layer by layer, which you'll see will be really good for sealing the outside of the tyre after you stitched it up, and it's waterproof as well. Now, anytime you're working with solvents or glue, you're going to want some gloves. I've got some nitrile gloves here to protect my hands. You're also going to want some isopropyl alcohol or a really good disc cleaner like this, disc brake cleaner, to clean the surface. You don't want any solvents or residue on your tyre because that might not allow the glue to work. And also in that respect, some sandpaper. I've got a quite high grit here in order to rough up the surfaces to make it more tacky and grippy when the glue goes on, but it's also good at getting away that surface layer so there's no contaminants on it. And then finally, if you're using a patch, then some grease-proof paper or some baking paper or parchment if you call it that, and a clamp would be a really good idea to clamp it together overnight, and the greaseproof paper will make sure that it doesn't stick to itself. So So step one is to prepare the slash and the tyre. Now obviously you want to take this tyre off, it would be the easiest way to work with it. Also make sure it's been cleaned as best possible with a bicycle cleaner, and make sure you wash out all of the sealant if there has been any. And then we want to put our nitrile gloves on, or our protective handwear, and get the area that you're going to be working with, maybe turn it inside out. So as you can see, there's lots of old sealant still stuck here, a bit like glue, which is where our sandpaper or our emery board comes in handy. And we're just going to try and rough all of that away, rough up the surface area to make the glue more sticky and tacky when it comes to putting the patch on. Right, that sandpaper's really done the job there. I've almost taken it back to the original rubber. And I'm just offering up the pad as well that I'm going to use to make sure that I have actually sanded away all of that sealant around the edges of the pad, which I have, so that's good. That's going to hopefully stick. And then finally we just use our isopropyl alcohol, IPA, or a disc brake cleaner just to spray over and get rid of any other residue or contaminants to make sure our glue sticks. And the reason we use this and not degreaser or other bicycle cleaning products is because we just want to make sure that we've got a solvent cleaner that doesn't leave behind any lubricants or other residue that's also going to stop the patch from sticking. And then just dab it dry with some workshop towel or some blue roll or some kind of cloth that's not going to leave any lint or dust or pieces behind, and then perhaps let it air dry for a bit if you have the time, and then you're ready to start patching. So I'm getting my waxed thread here, and you want a generous amount, but not so much that you're going to be pulling through long pieces of thread every time you stitch. So I'm probably going to go with maybe about 4 times the length of my split here and cut that off. And then you want to pick your weapon of choice from your leather needles, and I'm going with a hooked version because it's just easier to hook it through, to pinch the sides and pull it through and push it through, rather than a straight one, which is very much a bit of a pain on the fingers to push through. Now I'm going to start from the inside and leave my threads inside, and then tie off the knot inside as well, because then I'll be putting a patch over the top of it to secure it. So it's just extra security, and it'll be nice and neat from the outside as well. What you want to do is start off by hooking or getting your needle through both ends of the start of the split. Put it through so you've got a little bit of the thread at the end to work with and to tie off at the end. And what I'm going to do is make diagonal loops all the way to one end and then come back in the opposite direction so that there's lots of crosses, which is a cross stitch, and then you can finish up and tie off at the same end. And before you get started, you might want to get your tyre back into its normal shape. So I've put my split side the right way in, so it's not inside out, and I've just settled it between my legs so that it's not going anywhere. And that way, if it's inside out and you put a patch on it and then it flips back into its normal position, you might find that it bends and wrinkles the wrong way round. So do think about that before you get started. So now it's time to patch up our sewing work and cover up any bad stitching. And we want to make sure that your patch does cover everything before you put it on. So do offer it up while everything's dry and think about where it's going to go, so it's not getting too close to the bead of the tyre, because you don't want it to be too thick that it doesn't seat on your rim. And you need to get your vulcanizing glue. I'm going for shoe goo here, or a shoe glue, which is also a vulcanizing glue. And the point of vulcanizing glue rather than a super glue, for example, is that vulcanizing glue has elastic polymers which mimic rubber, which means that it'll be nice and flexible as well as sticky. Now, you'll want to get a thin layer of glue on the tyre and then a thin layer on the patch itself, and then you'll let that get a little bit tacky first and then put them together. So you just want to press it down firmly from the center outwards and work that out, obviously making sure you have your gloves on. And what we're doing here is trying to push out any air bubbles, because that could later on cause the patch to lift. And if you've been a bit overexcited with the glue and some of it is seeping out the edge, don't worry, just use your gloved fingers to wipe the excess away. And what I like to do is actually use that excess to run it around the edges of the pad and over the top of the pad, just to give it an extra seal, an extra layer of glue, but also an extra layer of waterproofing if you're putting sealant back in your tyre. So you can leave your tyre somewhere to sit in its natural position, hopefully, and let gravity and air do the work for you. And you'll need to leave this for about 24 to 48 hours to properly cure. Do keep an eye on it just in case you want any top-ups anywhere along the way. And as a bonus tip, I would even put some glue on the outside of the tyre just to waterproof that stitching and stop it from rotting if you're riding in a lot of wet conditions. If you find that your pad is lifting over time when you're checking it, then maybe it's time to get some non-stick grease-proof paper or baking paper or baking parchment and put that on both sides of the tyre and clamp it down with a clamp, preferably. Otherwise, maybe 2 books might help, although you don't want your books to stick to your tyre. But hopefully that will work for you. And if you've tried this method or something similar, let me know what you did down in the comments below, and let me know how much time you got out of your new revamped tyre. I'd love to hear your stories. Help out the GMBN community down below, and do give us a thumbs up if you want more money saving tips like this in the future.